The question is, can you do the same work, but instead of having a manager and a team of 5, can you have a manager and a team of 2, and then those 2 associates have, an army of AI agents to help them to do a lot of the work. And we're starting to see that in legal, within transactional work, to do a due diligence. You can now offload a lot of the document work to AI, or again, in tax and audit, you can start to offload some of the grunt work to AI, and that starts to shrink those teams a little bit.
Hi, my name is Demetri Panici, and I'm a content creator, agency owner, and AI enthusiast. You're listening to the AI Agents Podcast, brought to you by Jotform, and featuring our very own CEO and founder, Ida Tank. This is the show where artificial intelligence meets innovation, productivity, and the tools shaping the future of work. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the AI Agents Podcast. In this one, we have the Chief Product Officer at Thomson Reuters, David Wong. How are you doing today, David?
Really great. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for being on. First question, as fellow people who embrace the cold, how bad is it right now in Toronto?
It is properly winter in Toronto right now.
Properly winter.
I think low of -10 Celsius, ice everywhere. I almost fell down on my way outside this morning. It's properly winter.
All right. That's what I like to hear. It's going to be similarly bad Sunday. I think we're going to get like -15 Celsius as well. So rough out here, but we're really warm and excited about everything you guys are doing over there at Thomson Reuters. And, just to kind of kick things off, would love to learn a little bit more about you, David. You're currently leading product for a massive content-driven technology conglomerate. I'd love to hear about your personal journey. What was the path that kind of led you to this spot right here that you're in, talking about AI and being the Chief Product Officer at Thomson Reuters?
I really appreciate that. And a bit of an unexpected journey. I didn't think I would be working in legal and tax and regulatory tech at this point. But, my history, I've been working in product for, over 15 years. I started engineering. I did some business consulting. And then, like many, I went back into tech. And so I've been building B2B software for about 15 years, focused first in marketing, and then at Facebook, working on advertiser systems. And then I got the call about 6 years ago to join Thomson Reuters. And at the time, my first question was, what is Thomson Reuters? Because I think a lot of people know Reuters as the news agency. Everyone kind of reads the news. Reuters reaches billions of people actually every month.
They do a poll too during like election seasons. That's like the one that I remember too.
Oh yeah,
like,
I mean, they cover all the major world events. Elections just being one of them. But what I didn't realize was that Thomson Reuters' bulk of business, more than 90% of the revenue, is software and research systems. So it's software and research systems that are used by professionals, lawyers, accountants, tax professionals, auditors, risk professionals. And it's kind of the essential knowledge and essential software that underpins
everything else,
the justice system, the tax system, a lot of the economic activity. And so as I discovered, a little bit more about what Thomson Reuters did, I realized this is something which is really important, something like fundamental to how the economy and how a lot of society works. And so the opportunity was huge. 6 years ago, AI was just like some technology of many that could be used for these use cases. Gen AI had not kind of hit the scene in the way that it has now. And so there was a hypothesis at the time that tech and AI was going to transform these industries, but it was pretty slow going. And so I kind of made the bet that something would happen and that there would be some change. And it turned out there was a huge change. We just didn't expect that would happen so quickly.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. You said 90% of revenue comes from it. And, maybe that's just a misconception of the world and kind of how companies work and where companies make their money. That's actually more common than you'd think in regards to a lot of different companies. Why do you think that there is that misconception, I guess? Just because they get just a lot of traction and all the cool stuff they are doing in news, and then like you wouldn't know, the software side? What do you think that is?
Well, I mean, obviously the news part of the business is so well known, right? Everyone reads Reuters news. And we fly under the radar. We're pretty quiet about what we do. And so we're sort of like quietly making progress and quietly doing work to help to support our customers in a lot of professions. again, I think that as people learn more about Thomson Reuters, they realize there's some incredibly cool stuff that's happening
Yeah,
here. And on top of it, right now with this AI transformation, the all the pundits and analysts out there are saying, well, what's the kind of work that's going to get affected by generative AI and these
absolutely.
tools?
Yeah.
They go straight to professional work. It's the work that's being done in back offices, by legal teams, by finance teams, by accounting teams. And there's all this hypothesis. And guess what? Thomson Reuters is where a lot of that happens already. And we have a lot of the data, a lot of the tools. And that's what I'm excited to share more about today.
Yeah, that's what I'm really excited to talk to you as well about. So tell us a little bit about, as your role has evolved over the last few years. When did it really first start to incorporate and work with AI in the sense that it is? And I also am curious, maybe even as a prior question, before you started working at Reuters, what was the kind of initial exposure to AI? What was that moment when you interacted with it, when you went, "Oh crap, this is actually pretty. This is this is pretty incredible. I got to get my hands on this and use this more often."
Well, if you want the real story all the way back, like I actually remember way back in high school, I did like a neural nets like project
Okay.
for computer science. That's actually when it was like the coolest. But then I put it on the side because the common belief at the time was this is just hypothetical. It wasn't going to be practical. It took decades for the tech and um, all the different findings to kind of arrive at where we are today. Um, but there were a couple of moments. All the work that I've done has been uh, related to machine learning or some type of predictive modeling. When I did work in marketing and advertising, it was all about systems to estimate audiences, to be able to do targeting, to be able to estimate um, uh, predictive parameters for marketing and sales. And so there was already the power of that. You know, when I worked at Facebook, the entire Facebook advertising system is basically one gigantic AI system to predict outcomes. And it's one of the most powerful in the world. And so the effectiveness of it was there, and it helped to drive the revenues of Facebook. When I joined Thomson Reuters and I kind of switched to the professional space, it was a new domain, but I already had the belief that AI was powerful and capable. It was just, did it work on the problems? Did it work on the use cases that we have here? The journey that we've been on at Thomson Reuters actually, has gone back almost 30 years. We were some of the first pioneers to use uh, some of the first natural language processing techniques. We had a natural language question answering query system that was released in the late 90s, precursor to a lot of the search engines that came out again around that time. And we've experimented with all the precursors to the current generation of LLMs. So all the transformer models and BERT and things like that to be able to improve search and queries and things like that. When generative AI hit the scene, it was very natural as an application for us. And I actually remember August 2020, which was I think only about 2 or 3 months after I joined. I got an email from one of the research scientists on my team, and they said, "Hey, I just got exposure to GPT-3." And the
Wow.
headline
Yeah,
of the
that's early.
yeah, and the headline of the email was, "Is this our Kodak moment? Like, is this gonna kind of replace legal research?" And the team like got access to the tech. They worked with OpenAI, and they tested it on legal research back in August of 2020. And they created a series of questions. They had grading systems, evals that we don't talk about now. They were created all the way back when. And GPT-3 failed miserably. It was like worse than an F student. And so the team was like, okay, the tech is getting better, but it's not at the level that's necessary to do the type of work that lawyers demand. Play the tape forward, GPT 3.5 comes out, GPT 4 comes out. We run the same tests. We run the same tests and the same evals, and we see the F student become like a C plus student and then become like a B plus student with GPT 4. And we realize, oh, wow, like now's the moment. We've actually reached the stage of the technology where we can start to really apply this. And that's when at Thomson Reuters, we geared up our investment. So that fall and winter, when GPT 3.5 and 4 became available, we pivoted and invested about $150 million initially, all towards our internal AI development using generative AI, and started to put it against our legal research and some of our legal use cases back in 22 and 23.
What are the examples of some of those legal use cases, right? Because just want to kind of learn a little bit more on how this saves time, does more. What are some of those use cases?
Yeah, I mean, that could be the entire podcast. Like there are
Yeah.
entire podcasts dedicated to legal tech, but I kind of boil it down to a few places. When you look at the kind of things that we do at Thomson Reuters and that lawyers and professionals demand from a lot of systems, they're generally one of two things. They're either research and information retrieval, so helping to get the answer to some really nuanced, complex question, or it's helping to produce a written work product. So draft a contract, a research brief, a brief to submit to the court, a response, or even on the tax side of our business, which I'll get to, like a tax return. A tax return is nothing more than a written work product. It's just filling in forms, arguably. And that's what our software does, and that's kind of the core of the use cases that we see. It's either, again, information retrieval, researching some nuanced question, or helping to produce some kind of a written work product. And where we've had, I think, some of the greatest success is in that research step. So helping to answer questions, trying to take a lot of the hard kind of grunt work out of legal research, and tax research actually as well. It's the same type of challenge. It's not often known that legal research, when you hire a lawyer to defend you in court on some really complex litigation, these billion-dollar litigations, some of those legal research questions take days and days of just pure kind of grinding research to figure out all the nuance and arguments and counter arguments and statutes and supporting and non-supporting case law that will help you to argue your position in court. And we have been able to take hours out of that process and help to improve research outcomes.
And what kind of company sizes are you working with in regards to this? I'm curious because I think my girlfriend, who's actively doing legal research on some cases, would appreciate this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you kind of step back and look across our entire business, we
Yeah.
serve three major segments of customers. We serve law firms of all sizes, so from like one person firms that specialize in one domain all the way up to the biggest law firms in the world. So we are used by, I think, 99 of the 100 of the AmLaw 100, for example. We serve tax and accounting firms, so think also from small to big. So think two guys that do tax returns each year, all the way up to the big four. We serve tax, accounting, and audit firms, and then we serve corporations. So corporations with their legal teams, their finance teams, their risk teams, and those are the three kind of big customer groups that we serve.
Interesting. And then so with tax, I'm actually curious some of the types of things that you'd help out there. What does that look like? Because with taxes and with law, I do think there's maybe this preconceived notion of people who don't have friends or have any experience to those categories of things. They maybe assume that a lot of the different tax codes, different new laws, et cetera, are kind of just off the top of the head. A lot of these lawyers, when maybe there are new things coming out, new research that needs to be done. Is that kind of how you help with tax a little bit, or what are the various ways? I'm just spitballing here, but I'm kind of curious how you can help there, because I have a couple friends who are accountants that gave me some insights as to how it works more so than I would have known otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that the law is always changing. And so as decisions are made, new laws are released, as cases are decided, the law is dynamic and changing. So you need to stay on top of it. And I think that's one of the reasons why these types of research systems, and we are one of many actually in the world that do this type of thing. We're just one of the largest. On the tax side, yes, there is absolutely the keeping up with change aspect of tax research, but a lot of the work on tax is about application. So research is a smaller part of our business. We really focus on how do you apply tax law and the taxes to completing tax compliance. So the work that we do is we mostly produce software to help both corporations and tax firms help people to do their taxes. So when an accountant is choosing to use Thomson Reuters software, they're using it to complete the taxes of their clients. So if you work with an accountant, there's a good chance, probably a 30-40% chance that they're using Thomson Reuters software to do your taxes. And they're not using TurboTax, and they're not using pen and paper.
Yeah, I
They're
mean,
using
what was that?
software like ours.
Like, there's the scandal with FTX when they used QuickBooks or whatever, right? Everyone laughed that like an enterprise level company was using QuickBooks. Funny enough, I was working at a marketing agency that was running paid search for QuickBooks at the time, so we were all like laughing that enterprise is not catered towards TurboTax, QuickBooks, these types of things, and it seems like you guys kind of fill that in, and especially now with you being at the forefront of this AI technology, it's making it even easier on people.
Yeah, and so that's the ultimate use case, which is helping again a tax professional to do taxes on behalf of their clients. The AI opportunity is, and this is where agentic technology really kind of plays really well, is how do you automate the work that you do within that tax prep process? And there's so many applications which are actually really well suited to the current crop of agentic tech in tax, because uh, completing tax returns is routine but complex. That's the way I would think about it.
Very good framing. Yeah.
You can break it down into steps, and that's why it's been relatively well industrialized. Like you submit your documents; those documents are processed. You interpret it, fill in the tax forms. You look at the drafts, then you review, and then you can submit, and then you have to do all the payment and such. And so in that respect, it's routine. But those steps are really complicated. They're ambiguous steps. Up until now, you couldn't have a technology or a computer make the decisions. All you could do is just get help with like OCR and data extraction and things like that. You wouldn't really get a lot of assistance with how to interpret the tax position or to complete the tax return. Now we have created, and I think the market is starting to create systems that can actually make reasoned decisions to draft and to create the tax return. And that's thanks to both the advancements in the LLM tech, but also advancements in agentic tech. And I think it's a really great application.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really like where this can help across the board, because there are a lot of different things that I've definitely learned from doing this podcast. One of which is healthcare. That it seems to remove a lot of the nonsensical type of paperwork effort that goes along with things. And I do think with legal and with tax, those two definitely are huge categories for following sets of rules, and going through a complex process over and over again. Because it's maybe I'm crazy, but would you say that tax, especially, probably, and law, are two opportunities where they can be really improved upon, because many of the components are if then logic with numbers, or like if then logic with concepts or rules being broken or not? Maybe I'm spitballing too much, but I feel like in some respects it's much more complicated than that, but at a very pared down level, especially on the tax side, I feel like.
Yeah, I think certainly on tax, it's a good use case because you can sort of boil down the overall problem into sub problems, which are generally, you get guidance through written instruction, right?
Sure.
Right now, like if you think about trying to complete your taxes, you get like guidance from the IRS. You don't get a set of formulas, right? You get like a block of text, right, of how
And
best to,
formulas are what's needed for the
you
math
know,
to do taxes.
yeah. Actually, what ends up happening whenever the IRS posts those types of things is that companies like ours and Intuit and others, they then have to interpret it and turn it into formulas. They have to turn it into the wizards and the calculations as part of it. But that only that only assists the tax completion if you know how to enter the data into those forms. Um, Maybe one other kind of thing which I think is interesting about tax is that the labor situation in tax is also well suited to this sort of automation story. You've probably heard that like people are always saying, "Oh no, AI is not going to take people's jobs," or we're concerned about that labor disruption. I would actually argue in tax and accounting, uh, leaders of tax and accounting firms want that labor disruption to happen because there's a labor shortage in tax and accounting. Uh, there are not enough people taking accounting in school and coming out of school to fill new roles. And if you just plan out, like if you just forecast out all the retirements of tax and accounting professionals, there's going to be this huge gap in talent. And so the whole industry has been looking at tech to be able to help offset the gap in talent for about a decade. AI is actually providing the greatest promise to help to make the profession, frankly, better and more sustainable for people, because right now there isn't enough people to do the work in many cases.
Yeah, see, that's something that I could have imagined that, right, in the spaces like that, because and maybe I was being well. I was talking to one of my buddies who's an accountant, and I was like, I'll be honest, I do think there's probably a lot of opportunity for your industry to be AIified because it's complicated for sure, but it is re- repetitive, and I don't necessarily think that there are, outside of interesting problems that come up or interesting solutions to try to save people money in some ways. Sometimes there's as much of like a concern of removing people because you're not really losing creativity in that industry, or you know what I'm saying? Like there's the human element in every job, obviously, and I'm not going to diminish it completely with accounting, but I do struggle to find it being argued that it is needs more creativity than something else, like creating images and video, etc.
Yeah. Well, I would say that the parts that make the tax and accounting profession not attractive is the drudgery, and AI promises to take that out.
Yeah,
And
that's
and frankly, there is a lot of creativity in the tax and accounting space, but you can only do that creative work after you've gotten
after the
past
drudgery.
you've gotten the drudgery. Like, think about it. Like, people want to advise on a tax position. If you want it as well, when you talk to your accountant, you want to get advice on how to improve your position, but you can't even get there until you do your taxes. And if there is barely enough hours, in a tax season to get all the taxes done,
That's
there
probably what I
isn't
was trying to
there
articulate.
is
Yeah,
there
it's
isn't the
yeah.
time to be able to focus on the advisory or the creative parts. And that's the promise with a lot of these AI systems. Um, I mean, I'd love to share a little bit about what we've learned
Absolutely.
about, like,
Yeah,
what it's taken to be able to build those systems, and
please do.
what we think that what will happen eventually. Um, well, I think the first thing is that tax was viewed as potentially a bad use case for LLMs, because when you ask these systems to do math, they sometimes get it right, they sometimes get it wrong, and it wasn't a given that you could then apply even the best large language models to the tax problem. The way that I think we've gone around that is thanks to the development of agentic frameworks and agentic techniques for constructing AI systems. And the way I look at it, and it's kind of a nice solution for us, is instead of teaching the LLM how to do math, you've basically instead taught the LLM how to use a calculator. So what we've done is we've basically said, hey, let's create an agent that has complete automated API access to the entire tax calculator, right? So imagine you've got something like TurboTax, but it's available completely via API, and you can get instant computation as you update different fields and different inputs into that tax calculator. Um, if you do that, you don't have to worry about, is it doing the math right? You're just worried about, is it actually interpreting the position correctly and then inputting the data correctly into the tax calculator. And that problem is much better suited to the way that the AI systems work. The other thing which we've learned is that to be able to build great AI agents, particularly those that do this type of specialized work, we found that you need to have a few different ingredients. And this is a pattern we've actually seen apply across our business, not just in tax, but in legal and in accounting and in audit and other places, which is that on top of being able to use the systems, the software, which is often the case, you need to, connect the AI systems with software. Uh, you also need to have access to authoritative information, reference information, like in this case, like the tax law, like generally to be able to make a decision about how you interpret, let's say, rental income. You need to look at what the current laws say about rental income and what tax year it is, and then to apply that into the tax engine. But you also need to have training from experienced professionals. So you can't just go to the library and have the book smarts. You also need to have some street smarts from people who have done it before. Because what we've learned is that in so much professional work, there is judgment which is based off of sort of prior art that the industry as a whole, or the general consensus on how you apply a law or how you apply a tax position comes from experience. And so you need to have those professionals involved as well. And
What do you
so
think? So you keep going. You're going to
no,
go.
and so I was just saying, when you get all of that together, then we've found that there's sort of this magic combination. If you've got the right software tools, if you've got the right reference information, and then you are able to train it with professionals that know the work, and of course you have competence and mastery in how to use the LLM technology, then you're much more likely to create an agent that performs at that sort of substantive professional level versus just some kind of small assistant.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really like the way that you broke that down, and I do think it was a great analogy to say, or I don't know, maybe analogy is not the right word, but saying that you are teaching AI how to use a calculator rather than learning math, I think is a very important showcase of how you're teaching it how to functionally do a task rather than. I feel like a lot of people will, in the world of AI, they kind of see it as a magic bullet that can, without too much training in one category, solve all of your problems. But I've definitely learned over time, interviewing people like you, testing around with tools myself, it's more about finding ways to fine tune models or agents around specific tasks. And you
Yeah,
can have an army of these specific task completers. And that's really what's doable right now with AI. I think this general purpose AI is not there yet. And I'm sure even if you have a perceived general purpose AI that you're using, it's kind of, in the case of a company like yours or mine or whatever, when you're building out this front end interface, it's probably in the back end using a bunch of micro processed, very focused agents that's like delegating which to do what task to.
yeah, I think that's right. And again, I think there's like a good parallel to just like like
Oh, yeah.
the evolution of human intelligence, which is
Yeah.
when we learned how to use tools, then we were able to do more things. And it wasn't so much about how smart we were, but it was more about how capable we were, right? And that's what a lot of I think customers and consumers are expecting right now, which is they're like, I know that the systems are smart, but I want them to become more capable, right? I want them to be able to do more things for me. And that's, I think, what we're starting to explore. And that capability is what also connects, I think, the software integration with, again, knowledge and experience. So it's all about, you know, just like having, a member of your team, training somebody who's very smart how to use the tools of the trade to be able to have, again, the basic knowledge to do the work, and then the experience to be able to do it in the way you'd expect, right? Again, that book smarts and that street smarts as part of that work.
Yeah. What is your um, favorite part about doing what you do?
Um, well, I mean, I always love the idea about just building new things. I mean, this is a moment of incredible invention for like the entire industry. I would argue in the past 2 years, the state of the art in tax and accounting and risk and audit has advanced more than the past 10 years. And so like every single, you know, month it feels like there's some kind of new breakthrough or
Put that
new
on a
kind of product
t-shirt.
which is being released, and so that's really cool. And being part of that is a real privilege. I know my teams right now, they often say they feel like they're doing the best work of their entire careers right now, and
That's
you know
awesome.
that's awesome. It is. I no prouder kind of leader than to be uh, the leader of a team that feels like they're doing incredible work.
What do you think is the primary driver on a day-to-day basis for you, the people on your team internally, to feel like they're doing that good? That's kind of a curious question of mine. Like a lot of people have different reasons why they'd say or think, "Well, I'm doing my best work right now." Why do you feel like you guys are doing your best work
Well, I mean, I think there's a strong view, at least within Thomson Reuters, and I think a lot of companies that are working in our domains, that uh, they finally see a solution to problems that have been forever within our industries, right? Like I talked about the the talent shortage in tax and accounting. Every single year, if you kind of go to industry events, people will talk about it, right? They'll say, "How do we solve the talent shortage? How do we solve this problem?" And the hypothesis has been technology, for a decade, but it's all been very incremental. Where it's like, "Oh, here's something that'll, you know, you know, reduce the amount of time you spend on email or the amount of time you do, engagement letters with your clients or what have you." There's now the promise of actually a big step change. So I think that's really motivating. I think the second, and this is more on the legal side, is about advancing, the justice system. I think there's a lot
right
of belief that the technology is not just there to be able to make the lives of lawyers easier. I mean, that is obviously what we're trying to do for our
It's a good thing.
customers. It's a good thing, right? You want your lawyers to be able to do their work effectively and not completely burn out. It's a hard profession, uh, but there is also the promise of being able to make the entire justice system work more effectively. So reducing backlogs of cases within the courts, helping to be able to again address the talent shortage within the court system. So not enough judges, not enough clerks, not being able to process the cases that are there, and also just getting better information out. So access to justice is a big opportunity as well. We've made a lot of our AI systems available to pro bono and to access to justice um, uh, uh, kind of organizations, and they've been able to improve outcomes on the pro bono work. They've been able to help more people. They've been able to again improve the lives of so many people that they're serving, and so we think there's a lot there as well. The general techniques that we're putting out there will be applied across the legal industry.
And what do you think is kind of the? I know you mentioned that a lot of these tax companies, or tax firms, these various companies do want to implement this to the point of workforce adjustment. What do you think, like the timeline on any major changes like that would be? Because I do think that's always a question I like to ask. Where do you think generally jobs are going to be affected? And you did kind of talk about that a little bit with tax. What do you think the timelines are on with something like that?
It's a big question, and I'll
Yeah,
answer it in a few ways. I think
sure. Yeah.
one is, I think in general within corporations, you're seeing the pressure now. Uh, there was a recent MIT study that said, oh, about 95% of AI kind of programs are not delivering any ROI. And there was a bunch of research and kind of questions why that's the case. But it was ROI defined in a particular way, which is, are you actually getting financial returns? Are you getting financial either cost savings or improvements to the top line? And I think it's actually a reflection of the push that a lot of CFOs and of Wall Street are giving to corporations to say, hey, I see you're investing in all this AI software. Are you getting actual savings? Are you going to change your cost structure? Are you going to have greater growth, et cetera? And I think that demand is happening right now in the in certainly in corporations. Uh, it's part of the reason I think why we've been pushing very hard on our agentic technology, because one of our hypotheses about why that's the case is that broad horizontal technology gives you a little bit of efficiency on a wide range of use cases. But that little bit of efficiency doesn't translate as easily to bottom line impact, because, you know, if you or I are 5% more efficient in doing our job, we're not going to say, oh, you know, I don't need to be employed anymore. You're probably just going to do 5% more work, right? Or find something else to be able to allocate your time to. So you become more effective, but it doesn't show up as directly. I think when you start to create systems that can do substantive work, the work that a person might be fully dedicated to, like a paralegal or a junior tax preparer or something like that, then you actually have the opportunity to change the structure of your team. And then you might not need as many junior people. You might not need the same type of team structure. And then that starts to show up in the bottom line of organizations. And so that's a long, winding way to answer your question, because what we're starting to see is, particularly in professional services, that there's a hypothesis that the pyramid, like the pyramid structure of a lot of these firms, is getting squished. And
Oh yeah.
the idea, I think there's been uh, a term thrown around, which is the pyramid, you know, structure is becoming more torpedo shaped, which is like it flattens instead. And so you have fewer junior people necessary to have the leverage to be able to do the work within a professional services firm. And so that's one way that we're starting to see it show up. And it's, some of it is thanks to or due to the fact that junior members of the team can just be more productive, and you can get a lot of the work done for clients and customers using a lot of the new tools that are out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there is a big opportunity for AI to be. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for companies to. I like that little torpedo. I'm gonna start using that. It's fair, right? No, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you don't have juniors. It's just that you don't need to have five
As
times as
many,
many
yeah, because the
juniors
problem is it
as
starts here, and then you got departments, and then you got like like in a marketing agency. You know, like this is my opinion on what would happen at some point. You have a marketing agency, it's got the CEO, whatever. Maybe they have the head of paid social, paid search, etc. Just take one of those departments, right? Then you have like directors. Maybe at most you have associate directors, and then they have senior managers, then associate managers. There's a lot of associate managers of media, and like that whole realm of people, I just assumed would get squished, right? And therefore needing a less associate directors because you don't have as many subordinates. The only reason you have as many associate directors in those types of companies is so they can have just managerial type of job, right? Like managing the people below them. And that's a good point. The torpedo, I like that torpedo.
yeah, and it's a little bit more in professional services, right? Because in professional services, you know, work is usually delivered with like a manager and then a team of associates or something, right? And
Exactly.
the question is, can you do the same work, but instead of having a manager and a team of five, could you have a manager and a team of two, and then those two associates have, you know, an army of AI agents to help them to do a lot of the work? And we're starting to see that in legal, within transactional work. You know, to do a due diligence, you can now offload a lot of the document work to AI, or, you know, again, in tax and audit, you can start to offload some of the grunt work to AI, and that starts to shrink those teams a little bit.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. What about the things that you are doing personally? So obviously we have the company that you're working for, but I always like to ask this question to people who are very in the know AI wise. What's your favorite personal tool right now that you use with AI? My favorite, as an example, is Text Cortex. It's a great mini agent creator that's just a way better alternative to just using the main model interfaces.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest that I don't get a lot of personal time to be able to like explore this, because I spend a lot of time taking a look at our products and our
Your own product,
competitors.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm a pretty rabid user of all the the horizontal providers because I like to see the race. I like to see how you know how Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google are, and Microsoft, but mostly I would say it's like Anthropic, Google, and OpenAI, how they're kind of keeping neck and neck. Um, so uh, I think exploring the limitations and kind of capabilities of uh, Gemini 3 Pro has been really cool, and seeing all the new kind of workflow studios and integration that Google's made, I think has been really interesting. I think their product strategy is starting to come together, and I can see why OpenAI's got Code Red right now.
Yeah, that Code Red was interesting because then 5.2 dropped last
Mm-hmm.
afternoon, whatever it was. It's solid. It made a really big improvement in an area that a lot of people will care about, which is actually making decks and spreadsheets per request, which is really cool. What are you, kind of a last question or two just before we close things out? Have you guys as a company kind of taken advantage of MCPs at all? What are your thoughts on how those are? Currently, I think there's a lot of really cool efficiency improvements that'll come out of MCPs. And I think the concept of making a person 5%, 10%, 20% more efficient, my answer to that question is teaching someone how to properly use MCPs.
Yeah, I mean, you also shared a big question to wrap on, but uh, we are seeing MCPs pretty critically as a way to be able to expand the capabilities of our systems for our customers. And part of the reason why is um, for legal and tax AI systems to become, again, more useful, more capable, they generally need to be able to interact with other systems and other software which those customers use. So, and there's a lot of proprietary software within tax accounting and legal, and so a lot of the opportunity we have with our customers, particularly the big enterprise customers, is how do we create platforms where we can connect and integrate our intelligence and our data with their software and their data, um, and maybe intelligence that they are creating as well. And so there is right now, I think, a trend in the larger end of the market where uh, we're trying to create MCP integrations across different systems so that we can have more capable workflows and more capable AI systems as a whole. And I think a lot of it right now is around exposing um, private or proprietary data. So think about trying to get access to privileged data within a firm. You want to be able to highly select and carefully curate what is made available to an AI system instead of just dumping the data into storage. There are a lot of MCP servers which are created to basically expose the right data as needed for the purposes of a workflow, and so that's just one example of where it starts to show up.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I just think there's so much opportunity there. Like I had my CRM and cold outreach tool release their MCP a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah,
and I was just like working with my buddy who's doing some sales stuff, and I was like, "Hey, you can ask questions about what's going on in the campaigns using Claude now." That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
That's insane.
Absolutely this like the same concept, right? It's just that like um, yeah, the diversity of tools that are used by a firm or by an accounting firm are pretty wide. So yeah, there's a there is a big opportunity to make, again, an AI assistant, CoCounsel, our assistant, or a generic assistant like Claude or ChatGPT, they have access to a lot of that data in those tools.
I just think it's doing so much more than your general APIs were before, right? APIs are awesome because there's specific data endpoints to be able to receive information, but now being able to receive it in such a manner to where it can access all the points at once, parse through everything itself. It's truly that first step that I see towards with enough reasoning and enough access, an AI can do things. And I mean, do things practically. Because when I see a data set, if I had an AI with API endpoints, manually mapping it out in an automation, it can do something. It takes a lot of work. But with the MCP, it's like, figure this out for me. Like, I run this podcast. I wanted to help people get on more podcast shows and start doing PR work. So I wanted to compare what was being done by other people that had reached out to me to get people like you on this show, right? I literally opened up Claude and had the MCP tell me who are the last 6 PR people, what were their websites, and what do they do in order to, offer a good podcast PR service. And it was done in like 5 minutes. If I had delegated that to someone, it would have taken 4 hours, 5 hours a day. Like it's crazy. So that's just last little nugget to leave everyone off on.
Well,
MCPs are great.
I think it's a great like it ties back to some of the things we were talking about before, which is what are the ingredients you need to be able to create a really capable system, right? MCP is just like a means, right? It's plumbing essentially, right? It's a way to be able to get access to applications and data, which is effective for these AI systems. And where I was starting with on when we're talking about tax was, again, do you have the tools, the software? Do you have the knowledge? So the base information, the book smarts, to be able to do the work, and then can you train those systems to be able to do the work in the way you'd expect? Like, can you imbue it with the street smarts? And I think you're right. MCP is a means to be able to do that because it allows you to expose software, so the tools. It allows you to expose data and information, so to give you that reference data. And if you use it with a good workflow builder or an assistant platform or an AI platform that lets you train and refine, then you can imbue it with like the street smarts, the expectation. I think the hard part is that exposing the information is the first step, right? Like being able to stitch together and figure out how to use all those systems is where software companies and companies like us where we spend our time, right? Which is if we just MCP'd the tax law and a tax calculator to Claude, it wouldn't be able to do your taxes,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
It would have the ingredients to, but then creating a system and creating an agent around that would be the next step. And I think that's the cool thing, right? That's what we're trying to do across different parts of our business.
Well, it's awesome. And just so everyone knows where to go to kind of check that out, where can they go?
Just go to www.tr.com, two-letter
TR.com.
TL, top level domain. You can see everything that we do at Thomson Reuters, and learn more about our AI technology. Our AI technology falls under this one brand, CoCounsel, and we're serving, again, legal, tax, audit, accounting, and risk professionals across the world.
It's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time. I really appreciate everything that you gave us insight on. And make sure everyone to go to tr.com. Or if you want to spell it out all the way, it's
Yeah, you
thomsonreuters.com.
can go to
But
thomsonreuters.com, but
yeah, TR
it's
is a
hard to
lot
spell.
easier. It's hard to spell. Yeah, fair enough. With that being said, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and review the podcast on all the podcasting platforms so we can help out David and everyone at TR get their really cool stuff out there that I wasn't aware of in comparison to what they're doing on the forefront of news and everything. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
All right, thank
Bye.
you.